Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wandering DMs. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dan, and today we've got the guys from one of our favorite sites, Nerdarchy. We have Dave and Ted and Doug, and they're going to talk about their new product for 5th edition D&D, Mage Forge, now on Kickstarter. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting us. I was completely distracted by your intro. It's so cool.
Thank you so much.
That is high praise. That's fantastic. I'll remind our viewers that we on YouTube we do have super chat happening. So if the chat's going really fast and you need a question that you've got to get to the Nerdarchy guys, feel free to use the super chat, and we'll be sure to get it to Dave or Ted or Doug or whoever you're asking. We had Doug on a year back for, I think, what was your guys' first Kickstarter, the out of the box encounters, and that went really well. So I think the Mageforge product is your guys' second Kickstarter, I think, and it's going super well.
Thanks, it is number 2. I guess we did that back in 2019, which feels like a lifetime ago at this point.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Couple. So maybe Dave, tell us the scope of the new product. So Out of the Box Encounters was, I think, a hardcover book, if I recall. How have you guys tweaked things for Mageforge?
So first of all, when we put out something, we want to put out something that's going to make the GM's life easier. And make running games easier. Like that is just kind of what we've done with our Kickstarter starters so far. With Out of the Box, it was like, here's 55 encounters. You need something to do for a session, and you haven't had time to prepare or whatever. Boom, here you go. Mageforge is similar, but like in the sense of like, oh, I got to give my players some loot. I forgot to do that. Grab a card out of the deck. You can hand it to them. But it's 250 cards. Tarot-sized cards, because we wanted lots of space for cool art. We're spending a lot of money on art, so we want people to be able to really see it, and also it gives you more room on the other side to put text on there, because a lot of people have asked us, it's like, well, why did you decide to do tarot-sized cards? And you look at a standard size deck, and it's like, well, you don't have a whole lot of room to work there.
And they are across all rarity types. So like when you start getting up to the legendary and artifact, that's a lot of space. I mean, a bunch of the really powerful stuff, like we don't even have space for the lore, even on the tarot size cards. So like that's, got to be compact just to be able to get it in there.
Yeah. So it's going to come in a box set, which will kind of like, if you're familiar with like Uno, how they come in the double-sided, stack. So it'll be a box like that. And we also wanted a box to kind of like look nice on your shelf as well.
Awesome.
Nice.
I'm curious, what's the why go with cards ultimately? Are you imagining randomization via shuffling, or is it more for like the ability to pass them around the table, or is it something else?
A little bit of both.
Cards are just a great play aid. Like, you can just hold up the picture and be like, this is what you see. And then, after they figure out and know what it does, you can then hand them the card, so they have it in front of them, just easy reference, and they don't have to like transcribe everything onto their character sheet. Just like, when the play starts, the GM can just hand them their cards and they can just have it ready to use.
Yeah.
Also, randomization is simple.
Oh, go ahead, Ted.
And then from the randomization factor, like the DM, if you want to either, after you've killed the thing, go ahead and just, pull out random cards, or you can kind of sort through them and be like, oh, well, I'm looking for this kind of rarity type, this type of item. You can just kind of fan through them and pre-pick your stuff, should you so desire, rather than having to leaf through a physical book or a PDF or what have you. It's all right there, and you can just kind of spread it out as you see.
They're also color-coded, so by rarity, to make it easy. So you're like, I don't want to hand out an artifact in my group, but you just look at the color and you'll know.
Nice.
Well, part of it is just like celebrating the fact that we love magic items too, the same way that Out of the Box was sort of like, we just love having like a collection of ideas for, that isn't super codified for DMs. This is just sort of like, we love magic items, and part of the idea is like, a lot of them are consumable and things like that. So, and we just love cards. So, I imagine I'd like to see them going back and forth at the table a lot. A lot of them have just like one-time effects, or like I said, they're consumable. And we actually just made a free encounter that is on our website and put it in the update that sort of like plays into that. Somebody in a chat a few weeks ago was like, "Oh, is the Mage Forge itself an item?" And we were like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Well, that sounds like a cool idea. So we made it like a sentient artifact that you can sort of trade in magic items and recraft them and unforge them and like get quests to go out and make new magic items. So kind of wanted to give something to like, hey, you got 250 magic items. Are you really going to use them all in your campaign? Well, maybe. If you keep trading them in and just buying, breaking them down, forging new things with them and using them.
Nice. Paul and I are actually big fans of the card format. We've actually produced 2 products ourselves. One of which was Paul's Insanity cards, which he's currently retooling to another format. And one was our deck of spells, which was a presentation of like original D&D style spells in a deck. Nice. And, like when Doug was on the show, we said we are fundamentally people of the book. And looking at your guys' backgrounds, I kind of feel like you're in the same camp. And so I made a book version of the original D&D spells. And then Paul produced a card version. And my initial take was, well, obviously people are going to prefer my book is really a more compact, wizards are able to see any spell. And the ultimate result was all the players preferred Paul's cards. It was basically unanimous that cards were the preferred way to play with them. So I gotta take my hat off. It's a great mechanism. And in particular, if someone has it and wants to give it to another character, you just physically do that at the table, and it's a really wonderful way to do that.
Yeah, whether it's a reward like a magic item or even, like some condition, it just feels different, like you're getting something. Even if it isn't that treasure, it's like, I have this thing that's like my character's unique now because I have this card with me.
And I know Doug has said it, but I'll reiterate. The fact of handing it over and not needing I need to take notes on this right now, you can stay engrossed in the game by like, oh, well, even if I don't need to hold, even if I don't get to keep the card forever, I can transcribe this when the DM says, okay, this is where we're going to stop for now. And then now I can take my notes or take it in between, sessions and then be able to hand that card back if need be. Excuse me. But some DMs would just hold on to it for the breath of the game or while you have it. And then you just, you put it back in the box. I know a lot of players play at the same location. So like, whether you're storing, game props or whatever have you, it can all be kept in one location and then kind of like rehand it out, as you see fit. However you want to play it at your particular table.
It's just easier to reference something like that as well. Like, books are great when you're not playing.
Yeah. And I can particularly see it if it's a new, right, if like a magic item is brand new content and the player, like at least with spells, potentially the wizard should know about it before the game starts. But if it's brand new and it pops up in the game for the first time, obviously you don't want to shove the DM's guide over the player's side to read it. That's particularly for a new item, that's really kind of the ideal way to do that. It's very smart.
A lot of them I guess, maybe it's like a subtle trick of ours, though, is hopefully it like inspires players to maybe develop, their own motivations and things, because not all of them, but a lot of them have just like little quirky tidbits of lore or like hint at other things. And so I think having that card as a reference too, it's just like, oh yeah, I want to look into this, what does this mean? Like this little phrase or, this reference to some historical event or whatever. And, they're not super fleshed out, but hopefully that'll give DMs ideas too of like looking through these cards, like, that sounds like it could be a cool adventure. There's some nugget in there for me to work with.
Yeah, like we've got tidbits in there to grasp upon, but at the same time, it's a bit ambiguous enough that it could be, anything in anybody's campaign.
Magic items I really feel should have the capability of invoking quests, either to go get it, to get more information about it, or to find out where it came from if you've got something that's a lot of fun and interesting, then, it might wind up prompting a player to be like, all right, I need to know more. And, as I said, like, if it's vague enough, the DM has room to really explore uniquely in their own setting, their own world, as opposed to, like, if we hard and fast concrete everything, then it shoehorns the DM to a position that they might not want to go.
Yeah, to that point, too, a ton of these items, probably more than half, are like right from our individual games or games that we've played together. And so, we sort of wanted to give them that same quality, because even in our games, they weren't like super, codified and like, this is the whole history of this thing. But the bits that we added into the items were those things from our games, so like little character names or hints at other stuff. So, it's subtle, and it's probably just more fun for us, that quality to it. But I don't know. It was just.
And I personally feel.
I
feel like the kind of thing.
Game, thing.
Yeah, I feel like as a player, I can always tell, Doug. Like I feel like those kinds of things that come out of actual play experiences are how richer and deeper. I feel like I can tell when something's been play tested, rather than like made by fiat. And I always feel like those kinds of products just feel richer to me all the time.
Oh, yeah,
me too. Paul.
Yeah, for sure. That's sorry, go on.
So one of the things is if you're a fan of Nerdarchy and you've watched our various stream games, you might find like some Easter eggs in the deck from those games. Because there's definitely people that still talk about games that we've run years ago, and things that I think we've forgotten mostly because we're old. But the deck will harken back to videos we've shot, streams we've done, and then of course, obviously, then there's like our games that we play privately. So that's kind of like the fun thing too, is knowing that there's Easter eggs that some of like the diehard fans are going to latch on to it and find.
And it's not even just our channel. I play in a weekly game over on Mini Terrain Domain, streams on Twitch, and one of the items, it's an artifact, came from that game where my character actually wound up modifying an item that was just a family heirloom, not magical in any way, and I went on a kind of quest to be like, look, I want to make this better, not for my character, but for another character in the campaign. I wasn't expecting it to kind of get to the ridiculous proportions that the DM put it, but based on the checks and based on everyone's involvement, it's like, oh yeah, here's this utterly ridiculous item that my character's cousin now wields, and it's like, all right, this is awesome. Then I'd gotten permission from the DM to be like, hey, I really like this. Can we put this in our product? And he's like, dude, I'm all about it. I would love to see this, shine and show in this product.
That's great. Awesome. I mean, I think nothing really fuels creativity in a DM. I think like hearing a player actually describe, goals and desires for something to happen in game, right? Like the moment you get that engaged player who's excited about a thing, you're like, well, all right, time to double down. Let's really push the gas. So that's
to that point too. To that point too, like it's important to us, and just the way we like to play our games, that most of these items, they're not just like they're good in combat and stuff. Like even the weapons and things, a lot of them have features that are just give players ways to engage with the world around them, or just do something different. That maybe it's not super powerful, but it's like it's just some quirk that maybe it'll prompt them to role play more or just engage with the surroundings more. So that's like a real important quality to us. And of course, that being said, a lot of them are hella powerful too.
That's an interesting point you bring up, Doug. So amusingly, when Paul and I first met, we actually met at a computer game company in Boston that was making collectible card games online. And we, at one point, were actually pursuing the Magic the Gathering license. Came in second. which we confronted. We confronted Peter Atkinson about that last year on air, as a matter of fact. But that went, he's a good sport. But my point
You guys
is,
are waiting and biding your time. You're like, finally, we've got him.
Yeah, it was 22 years later. We finally confronted him. So viewers, feel free to go see that episode after this one.
You guys are running the long game on that one.
Bravo.
That's what we were like. So we've made games that were entirely, so a number of games we've made it entirely about cards and what's the card content and what can you fit on them and what does the art look like. And during that design process, there were some times when some of the people that were designing it were working on what's a thing that should exist in the world and how do we simulate that with our game mechanics. And then at other times, maybe at a later stage, we were like, well, what game mechanics can we support? And then how do you skin those game mechanics and what does it look like in the game? Where are your minds at most of the time these days when, maybe I'll ask Ted this, if you're going to make a new item, or do you start with like a thing that exists in the fantasy, or do you start with, here's some new mechanics I want to see engaged in 5th edition?
For me, it's a process of, what is my inspiration for it? I adore making magic items. I'm making them all the time. I could probably, if push came to shove, do this, infinitum. But there are times that I make magic items where I'm like, all right, I'm making an item for this particular character, so I want to give them something that either works towards or fits in the character's goals or the player playing their goals. Sometimes I approach it from a situation where, like you said, there's an interesting mechanic that pops into my head, and sometimes I've got an interesting NPC that I'm like, all right, I want to work with this, and they might eventually kill this person, so what's something cool that they might have? So for me, all of them, just depending upon where I'm at the time.
Cool. Yep. Interesting. Dave, what's your feeling about that? Are you more like what exists in the fantasy world, or you're more about like, let's make new mechanics?
It's, for me, it's about like narratively introducing the items into the game. So I am just as likely to grant characters boons that change their characters permanently, or enchant something spontaneously that they carry on them, or give them something to enchant something on them, or to upgrade an item they already have. Because, like, we've all been playing this game a long time, right? So we've all come across the character that fights with their grandfather's sword and it's special to them. But it really sucks when then they find another sword that's magic and they're like, sorry, Grandpa. And that thing is getting smelted down for scrap, right? So instead of doing that, I'd rather see Grandpa's sword remain special, right? And enchant that, and have it come out in the story. So that's how I tend to think about magic items. Or like, I want them to lend to greater parts of the story. Matter of fact, even like the DMG has a great section for magic items where it's like modifying existing magic items. And I've made many new magic items just from, taking existing ones and tweaking it through that table, because by the time you're done, it may have some similarities to an existing magic item, but it's a completely new magic item, and it also has an origin and history. And when the players get it, like, they have no idea what it is a lot of times, just because you've kind of reskinned something that's familiar to them and described it in a different way, and all of a sudden it's a lot more exciting. I mean, you can do the same thing with monsters, but in the DMG, they actually have a section for that to kind of show you how to do it.
Interesting. I got to do more of that. Like, I feel like, I tend to be a little bit OCD. I'm sure you've never met anybody in the gaming industry that's like that, but I tend to be a little bit OCD, so I tend to be like, here's what the book is, here's what it says, here's what the magic items are supposed to be, and I kind of need to free myself up. So that's actually a really good spot, Dave, that I need to put in practice.
Yeah, go to the beginning section of the magic items on DMG and just take what you've already been doing and just apply that right to it. And and you can still, follow your OCD while following the rules because it's right in there.
Nice.
Thank you.
That's, it's actually one of my favorite ways to introduce magic items into my game and make them a little unique is to take an existing one and just muck with the form factor. You don't even have to change any of the rules or any of the abilities, but just change kind of, what is the actual object. And I have a story about this that I've shared many times, I think probably on the stream already, but where I took a Staff of Healing, which is this, doesn't have a specific number of charges, but everybody can use it once per day. And I had this feeling of like, well, it's kind of this communal thing. Everybody gathers around and use the Staff of Healing. So like, well, what if it's not a staff? What if it's a hookah? And that really changed the tenor of the game when at the end of the battle, everyone's like, great, get out the hookah, set it up. Let's get some pillows. Let's relax.
I totally know what you're talking about, Paul, because for me, a lot of magic item stuff incorporates just like the visual element, and something like that's a good example too, because it's like, well, staff, it's been around, and you're not really thinking. You're just like, I'll use the staff, and it's like, how are you using it? People don't really think too much about it because it's just been around, and you just take it for granted.
Yeah.
But like something like that, it just is like, well, that's something like everybody can imagine what it looks like, and it's like an object that's relatable, and maybe it just gives them like that one moment, and like, I remember that time when we found that magical hookah, and like we all sat around the campfire, and they just engage with each other, the players.
Yeah,
it definitely sounds like a gateway magic item.
I'm sort of a multi-hall DM. I love giving out magic items, and I look at it differently than Dave. Not in a better or worse way, but I like giving players things that have nothing to do with any of their characters. And it's sort of like a little trick like a go-to trick I've taught myself from doing it is more often than not, players they'll start developing again like their own motivations of just like wanting to know more about it. Like one example, it was just a +1 longsword that I put in the game, but you could stick it in the ground and it would just create like a 10-foot radius of like wildflowers. I don't even think they did anything. It just that was it. And
nice.
Like the player just loved it, and he became he became known as like the pedal knight and stuff like that because he just I don't know like just stuff like that. It didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But they just wanted to know more about it, and like sort of became like a staple of their character that they never intended, or I did either. I just threw it in there because seems fun.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Personally, I'm a huge fan of magic items that have a little bit of a monkey's paw effect to it, where I want to give my players something that's like mostly good, but also this one weird side effect, which is maybe that's not fun, great, but is kind of funny. Do you guys have anything like that in the deck?
I want to say
think we do. That might be deck number 2.
Yeah. Are there any cursed items at all, or are they all generally beneficial?
Ted, you're kind of like our magic item czar. Is anything coming to mind?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we don't have anything cursed in there.
Okay.
I'm compelled to look at it.
Force them into research mode. Sorry.
We definitely have plenty of things that I would say are more fun than they are useful. Like plushies of thunderous power.
Oh yeah, the plushies. Yeah.
What plushies? Okay, explain the plushies. What is that?
So basically, we have an adventure called the Planar Zoo, and the idea is this extra-dimensional species go around collecting other things for their zoo, things that they consider less evolved, like adventurers, because you have the humanoid habitat. And so basically, it's like a zoo, and every zoo has a
gift shop.
Gift shop. That's the word I'm looking for. Thanks. And of course, so what else are we going to put in there but magical plushies that when you turn them on, they just like march around and do cute and cuddly things.
I mean, You've got figurines of wondrous power. We have plushies of thunderous power.
Yes.
So they're amusing, and in the right hands, you have a creative use. You can do something, fun and interesting with it. We have a whole new item type called charms that essentially are one-use magic items, but they cover, just about everything. Some things are cloaks, some things are coins. It could be, whatever have you. And once you turn it on, it does one thing or is good for a certain breadth of time. And after that, it becomes a non-magical object.
It's a nice way to get a little variety in your magic items there without, without overwhelming. I mean, I remember in my 5e campaign, that became a big point. I think probably on this show at some point, I went on a huge rant about attunement. And I've struggled with that a lot. You guys have any thoughts, any pros, cons on attunement or how much it shows up in your deck?
So for one, we definitely have some items that are matched items. So if you basically can attune to multiple magic items at the same time, it lets you kind of get around the rule. But they're specific sets, so you can't just use it with anything. So again, like it might be a whole quest thing, like, oh, I found this, and then you learn the lore, and there's, you find out that it's part of a match set, so you can go look for the other thing. I feel what you're saying, and I've got mixed feelings about it because, having played through all the editions where in, first and second, it's like whatever you found. And then third, you had slots, right? Where the gear would go. But also in third edition and Pathfinder, it just felt like sometimes my adventurer could have stayed home and just sent his gear out. So,
yeah.
I feel like attunement in 5e is kind of like the balance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of on the same boat. I know when I look at attunement.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
There's four cursed items.
Well, there you go.
Oh, thank you.
So I look at things with attunement, and at first I was really, really against it because of like, oh, well, what about this and what about that? But it's also like it's in the same vein of a spellcaster and concentration. It does kind of keep the reins in and really allow for the character and their abilities to shine. Whereas if you had all of these magic items, it would be like Dave says, I can just send my gear out. They're going to handle everything because it's more about the stuff than about the me. And if you don't worry about the attunement and you just like, all right, I'm going to find the best things that are out there, it takes the game where you're already like superheroes and turn you into like a god. So that's not as much fun because you really have to get, harder and harder foes, or you're not challenged. And where's the fun in the game if you're not challenged?
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the goes, things like charms and consumable objects, like those are things that you can hand out like candy. And, if, this one encounter of this one thing winds up going a little bit easy, well, they're not going to do it again because the object is done and it's used, it's consumed. So the next one, they're like, okay, well, now what do you do when you encounter another one?
Yep. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, like, I totally did that experiment where it's like, I was grumpy about attunement, and if you just ditch it, the game goes off the rails very quickly. And as you say, like, it's all about the gear and what's the point. So I definitely agree. It's a necessary kind of game balance mechanic. But I don't know. I think I view it these days as kind of a necessary evil in the 5th edition rule set because, I guess mostly what I rebel against is this idea that you just get complete knowledge by just having a little nap. I miss the old school days of like, what do these boots do? I don't know. Put them on. I guess that's how we find out.
Well, we don't actually use that in our games. Okay, we make them identify at the very least for that. And obviously, that we're straying from the rules, but at our table we just tend to someone usually has a way to identify anyway, so it kind of gets figured out. But I would say too, like with the attunement thing is, remember, it only takes a short rest to attune something. So you could have a bunch of stuff and like it's just like, well, what's going on? Tomorrow should I attune to something different and kind of like you have the Swiss Army pack of magic items.
You know what you can do though too to still ground it in the rules. I mean, if whether you take magic items out of the DMG or you're making them up, is just make the attunement something else. Like, you know, requires attunement by a character who has like bathed in the tears of a unicorn or whatever. You know, what just be like, and they could spend that hour. Maybe after an hour they know that, or if they identify it, they know that they have to do that. So it's like, yeah, you could, you know, it'll only take an hour, but you also have to do this thing. So that, you know, that's like, do they want to do that thing? If they don't, then that's their choice. But if they do, it's like, okay, well, now they're giving you, you know, the fuel you need to make adventures for them.
Interesting.
You know,
would you consider something like that, Paul? Oh. Go ahead, Ted.
No. Okay. I said, and in regards to the, you know, not being able to, or being able to just know what it is after, you know, I take a nap with it, I just examine it. You know, you can go to whatever breadth of knowledge you really feel like. You can have it, you know, as per written. You can do what Dave was saying, where like, okay, you need the identify spell to know what it does. Or like you could really look at, you know, some of the earlier edition spells like Analyzed Wiomer, where like, all right, identify can tell you the base properties, but you know, you really need powerful magic to really get into things that are very rare or legendary, to really know what this item truly has. You know, like the level of, you know, getting the information out of the item, you know, can be wherever it is you really want, whatever fits your play style, whatever the players at the table are willing to accept. It's really open to however you want to have it at your table.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Okay, so I think I want a little bit more specifics about the Mageforge project. So what I might do is I might go down the line here and ask, what is your favorite new item in Mageforge that you can talk about? Maybe one that you wrote. Dave, what's your favorite single item in the Mageforge pack?
It's probably the Ring of Hork. Only because that was like the first adventure that I wrote to be published. That we sold on our website, and I've ran a bunch of times. It's you know, it's from the Maze of Mandoon, and it also alludes to something like more sinister and more creepy. It's this ring of 3 different metals that are intertwined, and they look like worms. And it has a very deep connection with aberrations. And also has the ability to store spells in it as well. But, you know, it comes preloaded with some really creepy ones. And also, like, you know, lets you communicate and understand deep speech. And it kind of like, it doesn't have a curse per se to it, but it kind of like moves when you're not looking at it out of the corner of your eye. The worms kind of wriggle, and you know, you might hear like voices and stuff like that at the peripheral. So it's got a little bit of that monkey paw, but also like if you start delving into it, it's like, oh, where did this come from? And you know, is something going to come looking?
What spells does it have? What spells does it have exactly?
So I think we had to rework them because they were SRD spells. But again, okay, like it started off as something like in one of my games. Right, so you know, so it might have been like Ever's Black Tentacles, and what was the other one?
That's just called Black Tentacles.
Yeah, Black Tentacles, right. And then there's like a low level spell, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I think it has Entangle, Black Tentacles,
and yeah, and the idea so like just creepy stuff.
It's a long entry. That's one of those ones that the additional secret info is in the little booklet. That's also
well, that's I love that that kind of solves Paul's issue about having like at least two levels of knowledge that aren't immediately evident to the players. So on our competitive tournament D&D show from a year back, the Big Bad, the Big Bad, the main villain that I was playing was primarily worm based and worshipped squirmy things underground, and we had purple worms in the area and stuff like that. Paul, why didn't my guy have that ring? Should my guy have had that ring, Paul?
Didn't exist yet.
Why didn't I know about this? I would have won. What happened?
We'll have to bring it back for season 2.
I want a redo. Yeah, I want that thing on a redo. Thank you, Dave.
That Ring of Orc is one of the ones. They don't all have this, but we sort of incorporate a bit of 4E like lore checks tables for some of the more complicated or lore heavy items. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it's just like DC 10 Arcana check. This. If you get a 15, you know this and this sort of thing. So a few of the items have that. That's one of them.
And Doug also kind of mentioned the booklet. So, when you get the deluxe box set, whenever you get card games, whatever, they come with a rule book, right? Well, it'll have that, but any of the information we couldn't fit on the cards will be referenced there. And again, too, you can put that extra tier of information that the players may not, even if they know what it does, may not have access to. It would go in there.
Like those curses.
I actually really love that. Yeah. Exactly. Ted, what unique item stands out to you in the Mage Forge?
All right. Well, there are tons of them, and it's going to change, day to day, week to week. I've been kind of art directing for a lot of this, so for me, there's a lot of things that jump out as oh, well, I think the artist really nailed this aspect, whether it be they came up with a good idea, or whether I'm hey, I want you to make this ring that looks like you've just carved it right out of the sky and slipped it on your finger. So there's a lot of things that I love from that perspective. If I had to say push come to shoves, the Gerta Brelne is the legendary or artifact maul that is from the game that I play, but I think that's an easy take. So I'm going to go in a different direction, and I'm going to say the Frog Tongue Shield, because of the mechanic of literally it's like a shield that has a frog's face on it, and it has the ability to shoot out a tongue and actually attach to somebody and pull them in. So the mechanical aspects of that I think are just beautiful. So yeah, I said multiple, but deal with it.
I like that. I like that shield idea. That is a clever, and it kind of echoes just a little bit about using Medusa's head on your shield to your advantage or something like that. That's really sharp. I like that a lot. Cool.
We have a decent number of frog-related things in this particular project, just because there's a lot of frog-related monsters in D&D.
That's right. That feels very D&D-ish to me. That feels very Dave Arneson type Temple of the Frog type stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad to see you guys carrying the frog flag forward. Finally.
Oh man, there's so much frog stuff that we could probably do a whole campaign setting of frog stuff. As a matter of fact, that Frog Tongue Shield, when we were at D&D in a castle, that was prominently used in my campaign. It also does if you fall more than 10 feet, the tongue will latch out and pull you back up and stuff. It's crazy. My favorite item, there's so many of them, but I'm going to stick with what I've been saying. And there's also a frog-related thing. That's the Croak Cloak, because I just love cloaks, first of all. The art is awesome because when you put it on, it looks like sort of the Super Mario Brothers 3 frog suit look where the eyes are on top.
Nice.
And while you're wearing it, let's see, your jump distances are tripled in height and length. And you can polymorph yourself into a frog or a giant frog while retaining your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma once per day, basically. And I just like the idea. There's so much frog stuff. I just that's sort of one of my bucket list campaigns. I was trying to do a total frog everything campaign with all the and part of it is actually because Ted's daughter is just so adorable and she's super into frogs, and that's sort of several things are inspired by her, so I just think that's kind of a cute aspect to it that I get a kick out of as well.
That's awesome. Speaking of, we had an episode a while back about cursed items and how there were a lot more of them, in the first edition era. And you guys know that in first edition there was in the core books there was a cursed item called the Cloak of Poisonousness that written by Gary Gygax, and if you put it on, you are just dead, no saving throw. The end. That's it. And Paul ran into that in a game. Paul was the victim of that in a game, and frankly,
Oh,
Doug,
man.
when you said the Croak Cloak, that's the thing that actually popped in my mind. That should have been called, right? The Cloak of Croaking. But I think your item is better. I think the players will probably appreciate your item more, frankly, Doug.
I would hope
wasn't
so.
that like a salt-encrusted brown leather cloak, the cloak of poison? I want to say it was described in the D&D.
It is now, Doug. In the future, that's how I will describe it.
I think it was, or maybe I'm thinking of the cloak of the manta ray or something. But I've always just cloaks are just so.
I think you're right.
It's like that. That just screams like fantasy to me. You got a magic cloak.
So I wanted to ask you guys just another sort of mechanical question about the deck itself.
Sure.
We were talking before about Dan and I are obviously big fans of physical objects at the table. Love the idea of passing around cards and whatnot. I yearn for the day where I don't have to ask this question, but a lot of people are playing online these days because that's what we have to do. How do you see this product being used for folks who are playing via stuff like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or etc.?
It's funny you should ask.
Do you have anything? Yeah.
It's funny you should ask. One, there's a digital version, which is going to be a combination of print and play cards as well as a book. They're going to be putting a book, and then the other thing is everyone that gets from the $20 tier up will get access to claim the VTD version on Shard.
Great.
Great.
What does that entail? I guess I don't know Shard, frankly.
Shard is another one of the VTTs that's kind of up and coming. They're one of the newer ones, and they've been partnering with. They've actually been partnering with a lot of different third party companies, and for that, all you have to do is sign up for a free account over there, I think, and get the claim the Mage Forge over there. We also have our out of the box encounters over there as well.
Great.
And that's a great
There's
point,
a lot
Dave.
of VTTs now.
But that's a great point, Dave. Like more broadly, with even people that play, in person tend to just have a lot of digital products and things like that. And with D&D especially, it's just like, well, I mean, there's no denying people have their characters on D&D Beyond and whatnot. So having avenues for digital platforms for third-party creators is pretty important these days, and it's cool that Shard reaches out to so many people, including us, to just offer those things
Awesome.
there. They have pretty cool, I don't know if it's not really an affiliate system, but just kind of way they do it. So
Great.
nice.
Cool. Great. We'll definitely have folks check that out.
Cool.
And it's good to
Now, I
know
got a
that
question.
there's a method to use these cards online, which again,
Yeah.
frankly,
Yeah.
I hope that we can all sit around the table and pass cards around each other all the time.
Use the actual cards, please.
yeah.
I mean,
Now, I got a
our
question
groups
for-
have gone.
Oh.
I was just going to say, our groups have gone back to in person for a while after we matched up
I mean,
all of our vaccination schedules. But then, this month, we're doing a round of session zeros for new games we're playing, which all ended up being virtual again, as the Decepticons ran through my household. So
There's a lot of chatter about attunement in the chat. And I was just a random thought I was thinking about when we were talking about it earlier, but attunement is sort of like Warlock invocations, where it's not like a hard and fast rule, but if you look at it enough, you notice the things that affect other creatures are the things that require attunement, or in the Warlock's case, the things where you have to use your spell slot, for the invocations, and the things that are just personal utility things. Magic items are like that as well, to a large extent, or that they have charges don't usually require attunement or using a spell slot. Because if it has charges, who cares? It's just sure, pass it around, still using up the charges of it. But things that are if it shoots a fireball, then it's gonna, nobody gets to do that for free.
Interesting.
So I don't know, just another quality of attunement to think about.
yeah. So I presume a lot of the charms you guys were talking about, I assume, don't require attunement.
Right.
I'm going to go out on a limb. assume that, yeah.
Yeah, those, when you use them, it's just unless it says otherwise, it's just like for the next 24 hours that affects you, and they're all manner of like some of them are very rare where it's like you have invulnerability for 24 hours or whatever, and some of them are just like what the weather is like for 24. Or I don't know if that's exactly one, but they're mundane.
Paul, I kind of like this question in the chat from Allo Clark. I don't know if you can pull that up on,
Allo Clark. Love that
guy.
Yeah, sure. Let's get that up
I feel like it's a good question.
on the screen.
So Allo's asking if you pull a card. Go ahead, Paul.
No, yeah, after you. You started. Go for it, Dan.
So Allo's asking if you pull a card, does it magically reappear in the deck, or is it gone forever?
Well, the deck itself is not a magic item.
Yeah.
But maybe in your world it is, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, there's only one copy of the card, so I guess no. In practical terms, Allo, no. Because that's the only copy you get.
If you
You could download the free encounter that we offer, get access to the Mage Forge device, and unforge that item and put it back in the deck if you want. Which you should probably go do because it's a free encounter.
That's.
I'm going to take this lull to talk about. There's also a number of items in the deck that have varies for rarity, so that like if a normal +1 longsword is an uncommon and a +2 is a rare, there are some things that exist across multiple rarities on the one card. So like if you as a DM, you pull it out, oh well, this is here, you can select which rarity you want it to actually be. And should you so desire, maybe in your world that item can power up if you went with a lesser rarity, or maybe it's just a static item of like, nope, it's just this and it is what it is. So
I guess it was last week. I guess it was last week that we were talking about diegetics a lot. I suppose the DM can make a decision about whether the Mage Forge deck itself is a thing in their world or not. I suppose you can go either way with that, which would be interesting. Yeah,
I mean, I've had games where, or at least heard stories where DMs have taken the deck of many things and like, all right, I'm going to pull out the cards that I don't think are fitting for the story that I'm playing or the style of game that I want to run. So they pare it down to what they're looking for. So like you can do the same kind of scenario of, well, I'm going to tailor make my deck of the Mage Forge and hand that out as a magic item. And, just like the cards that, disappear, okay, well, you pull it out, the thing appears in front of you and you've got it. And maybe you have to wait X amount of time before you can pull another card. Maybe you need to do something to reenact or magic the deck so that you can be able to pull another card. And that could be the concept of a quest in and of itself, or the backdrop for the main quest of like, well, while we're waiting for the story part to reload, let's go off and side quest, the deck.
Neat. I could imagine a DM like swapping it out, making their players think they'd run into a deck of many things, the classic magic item, and then swap out Mage Forge, and you got this instead with kind of the same mechanics around it. That might be fun.
That would be great because they would actually have like a whole deck of really beneficial things without drawbacks, but they'd probably be like, oh, we shouldn't draw from that. Like, it's, it could be bad. It's like the whole time you're thinking like, it's all just good magic items.
Exactly.
Well, I have not found a group where everyone is going to be, the paranoid type that refuses to pull a card. There's always somebody like Dave who's like, nah, I'm pulling a card.
Oh, yeah, you got to. Come on. See a deck of cards in a D&D game, you pull one.
I will say, Dan, even though you love books, doing this kind of stuff is a lot harder to do with something in a book than when you have the physical asset of it at the table. You can come up, you can, maybe, and honestly, like some of this stuff isn't stuff we really had thought about before, but yeah, why not? You could totally, change up how the items work and how the item is actually operated in your game to, do some fun and random stuff.
As soon as you tell me about the
it-
extra book addendum, I feel pretty free to go in that direction. I think that's a really good idea. Yeah, we're going to say, Doug.
I was just say, at the end of the day, I mean, the games we play are largely subjective to how you like to play, the characters, what the choices they made, like mechanically and narratively. So, yeah, I mean, feel free to change this stuff up however you like. People that with your Mage Forge magic items, change stuff, or just take abilities away, slap it on other things. Like Paul said, change what it looks like, make it ring into a hat or whatever. It does, they're all just our main goal, whether we're DMing or playing, is just to get a group of people to engage with each other and create these awesome situations together. So hopefully that's what is behind our thinking and all the magic items we make and all the content we make, really.
We like to make sure
that's a pretty good
that people are having fun, and we like to inspire, whether it be the player or the DM, with our ideas.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's a pretty good segue, because one question I wanted to get into is, viewers of our show, we very much straddle all the editions. So from week to week, we talk about first edition, or even before that, original D&D. We talk about a lot OSR type stuff. How useful would Mageforge be for DMs of other editions? Could you take this and easily convert a particular card to original D&D or BX, or is it you're just locked into 5th edition and it can't be used for anything else?
I would say it would be as hard or as easy as any magic item that's been created by Wizards of the Coast. So, I mean, I haven't really done a lot of converting. Like I've converted 3rd edition stuff to 5e and just run it as is, just knowing like monsters and encounters would be harder just because the numbers are different. But I haven't done it with like items per se.
Yeah, I would say if you're... Oh, go ahead, Ted. Oh, if you're like... if you're like competent, at like tweaking things in whatever edition that you like, you probably could. I mean, 4E would probably be, more difficult just because it was a much different sort of system. And 1E probably would want to tone down like the extra damage that a sword might do because you just don't have as many hit points. But I mean, if you're reasonably competent and get the gist of what you want out of the item, I don't think it'd be too hard. Sorry, go ahead, Ted.
We're not too worried about 4th edition. We don't talk about that very much.
That's my favorite.
That's good advice.
So I would say if you're familiar with 5th edition and you're familiar with the edition that you're playing, it should be easy enough to convert. As Dave says, it would not be any harder to convert anything that Wizards makes. I would look at almost like, considering how much crunch went into 3rd edition, it's probably a less powerful item in 3rd edition than its rarity would imply, but you could just straight up add it to that particular game without any real worry. You would just not worry about the thing that says requires attunement, and you would have to look at what the slot is and make sure that I can't wear 2 cloaks, or I can't wear 2 sets of boots. But looking at it from that aspect, I think it would be just fine. It's been so long since I've played 2nd, I'd have to really look and see how it goes to get into there. But going back to that original point of, if you're familiar with 2nd and you're playing it regularly and you're familiar with 5th, I think you could make it work without, with a little bit of effort.
I would say the visual aspect of the cards transcends all editions. And could we say 4E is the Bruno of D&D? I don't know what that means.
That has a whole bunch of layers to it.
And if you don't have kids, then you're not younger, you probably won't get the reference. So
I have no idea.
Doug, I think we have some viewers who are shocked by your 5th edition admission. So we really appreciate the the public revelation that I guess people didn't know about until today. So thank you for that.
Hey, look, coming out of 3.5, I felt like it was a simpler mechanical system that handled things very well, and I felt, and my friends felt like more free playing it. Like it just felt faster, and I liked the gamey. Like I liked that it had the gamey language. Because I don't know, it appealed to both sides of my brain. It was like, yeah, I can be all creative, but there's also this just like really simple, quick, streamlined, fast-moving, like logical thing that was all sort of relative to each other.
That's great, and how dare you, sir? And I'm so glad you were here today.
We are running up on the end of the hour here, so I just wanted to quickly ask our friends from Nerdarchy here if is there anything about the product or about Mageforge or the Kickstarter, anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to make sure we got out there before we run out of time.
I think our whole goal was just to keep it simple and streamlined. We just did so much bells and whistles with out of the backs, and it was just like a nice palate cleanser to celebrate our love of magic items that we hope inspire players and GMs to just have cooler, more fun gaming moments together. And we are going to be doing a live stream on Thursday, February 3rd from 8 to 9, Dave. So that last hour that it's open, just to hang out and watch it wind down. So we hope people come and join us over at Nerdarchy Live.
I'll kind of reiterate. So it's 250 tarot-sized item cards with the full-size art on the one side, all of the item stat block on the other, with some extra addendum information in the printed lore book within the box set itself. As Dave kind of mentioned, the items are color-coded by rarity. So if I want to pull out a common magic item, well, I can go to this particular color that's going to tell me that it's common, and just strip out all the commons from the deck and be like, okay, boom, let me find the one that I want to give to my players for this kind of thing. So it makes it a lot easier, whether you're looking at the gem at the bottom or the color bar at the top where the name is. Those things are all paired up and easy. Make sifting through the deck much easier.
I would just say go take a look at the page, because my favorite part is the GIFs.
Excellent. Viewers, if you want to check out the Kickstarter for Mageforge, there's a link to it right now in the chat. Or if you're coming and watching this video after the fact, I'm sure that there's a link to it in the description of the video itself here on YouTube as well. While you're there, leave us some comments. Tell us about your favorite magic item. Tell us what or if you've used the product. If I'm talking to you people in the future where it's already out and in your grubby hands, tell us your favorite item and how you used it.
Definitely. And remember, if you're new to our show, that you can follow, and subscribe to us, The Wandering DMs. We're on YouTube and Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and also GitHub if you're a coder. And we do have the handle Wandering DMs on all of those sites, so look for us there, and you'll be notified about upcoming episodes. And if you're not subscribed to Nerdarchy on YouTube, what's wrong with you? We also have a link to their site on the YouTube description, so go subscribe to Nerdarchy while you're there, too.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks again for having us on.
Yeah. Thank you. Viewers, if you prefer to listen to this show in audio-only podcast format, you can do that. Podcasts of our show are available on our website at wanderingdms.com and through various third-party carriers such as Google Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes. If you're listening to us on one of those sites, please take a minute to rate and review us there. That helps other listeners on that site find us, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do. As usual, big thanks to our patrons who support the Wandering DM show. If you would like to join them, please visit patreon.com/wanderingdms. You'll see a couple different tiers there. Benefits like access to a private Discord server, monthly behind-the-scenes videos, polls, and surveys. And also, our standard after-party chat will be on Discord in about 10 minutes and talk live, continue the discussion with our viewers. You're going to be there today, Paul?
Yep, I'll be there.
Awesome. Awesome, great. So big thanks to Dave and Ted and Doug from Nerdarchy. We're so glad you joined us here today. Don't forget that we are live every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So please join us next week for another thought-provoking discussion.
We'll see you then. Bye, everyone.